Paper Mario, the Nintendo series with probably the most toxic fan base. It feels like if you exclaim that you like any other game than Thousand Year Door, people will point a rocket launcher at you. Personally, I liked Thousand Year Door. It was a pretty fun game with fun characters and a fairly engaging story, but the thing is, it's just not my favorite. While I did like the game and I think the positives outweigh the negatives, there are some flaws that hinder my enjoyment. While the battle system is fun, it can sometimes get very tedious, especially with the high amounts of enemy sprites on one screen at any time, and the fact that many of them can outrun you. Not to mention, you lose coins when you run from battle, so you kinda have to fight. Again, it's fun, but it can get annoying and tedious, like, a lot. Also, it kinda feels like the story wasn't fleshed out well enough. It's not bad by any means, in fact, I'd say it's pretty good, but sometimes it can just feel a little bit rushed through. Again, and I feel like I have to restate this, TDYD is really good, and I really did like it, but I think its quality is greatly exaggerated online. Now, you may be wondering, if TDYD isn't my favorite, then what is? Well, it's Super Paper Mario. This game gets a great amount of undeserved hate. It is, in my opinion, the greatest and strongest game made by Nintendo ever. It has probably one of the best written stories in gaming history, right up there with Red Dead 2. I really wanted to talk about it, because I'm tired of seeing people hate on this game. So, join me today for an in-depth analysis of the entirety of Super Paper Mario. I'll be covering the story, important moments, and the gameplay. So, let's cut the crap and get on with the video. The game starts with a cutscene in which we see Bowser and Peach getting married. Holy, this is weird. This completely unholy matrimony of two complete opposites forms the Chaos Heart, a universe-ending, world-destroying, black hole-making relic. After this cutscene, we cut to right before the wedding. Mario and Luigi are informed that Peach has been captured, and our heroes, of course, immediately head to Bowser's castle for quite obvious reasons. Once there, Bowser claims innocence before a mysterious figure named Count Bleck appears out of nowhere. Mario tries to attack, but is quickly knocked out by Bleck's powerful magic, and then everyone was kidnapped. Mario is later woken up by a colorful butterfly named Tippy. She introduces herself and then teleports us to the main hub of the game, Flipside, where we meet Merlin. He says that he's a descendant from the ancients who created the town, and that he's studying the light prognosticates to keep all worlds from ending. He points our attention to the black hole in the sky and says that we are the chosen hero and that we must collect all 8 pure hearts, and gives us the first one. Tippy leads us to a heart pillar so we can use the pure heart that we just got, and once we do, a red door opens back up where Merlin is. And this is the basic formula for progressing through the game. We obtain a pure heart, find the heart pillar, and then the door to the next world opens. Rinse or repeat. It sounds a bit basic, but it's fun. Not to mention, to actually get the hearts, you have to go to the actual worlds. Once you go through the door, we get a cutscene where we see Count Bleck and his gang, and this cutscene perfectly introduces all of the members. Bleck is a pure evil jerk who speaks in the third person, Mimi is a bit of an immature and goofy shape-shifting young girl, O-Chunks is a muscle who's like Scottish or something, I don't know, and Dementio, as implied by his name, is demented. Oh, also Nastasia is Bleck's assistant, and she speaks like a millennial, and she has mind control powers. After this cutscene, we finally get to the world. We're reminded by Tippy that we must find Bestovius to learn our dimensional technique, and here, we're introduced to Tippy's special power, where if you point the Wiimote on something at screen, she'll analyze it. And with that, we're now ready to explore our first level, Line Land, which is a pretty normal grassy area, except it's cool. Everything is lines and boxes and stuff. Eventually, we find a house in which we find Bestovius, who, as his name implies, bestows his power onto us. And now, we can flip in between 2 and 3 dimensions. And this is what makes the game super fun. It's complicated. Man, sometimes it can get a little overwhelming, if I'm being honest. With Tippy's scan being able to see invisible objects and being able to go from 2D to 3D at any time, it can just get a little bit complicated. Though, while you're in 3D, a timer will start ticking down, and if it runs out, you'll take 1 damage. It's not too big of a penalty, but if you're already low on HP, it can get quite dangerous. Another thing I want to talk about is the combat. It's a combination of classic Mario real-time combat, with jumping on people and stuff, but combined with RPG elements. So, it's all the good of RPG battles with none of the fluff. I personally like this way better than the fights in TTYD. There's also a variety of items in the game. You can get them by exploring or even buying them with coins, and they do a lot of different things. Some of them heal you, some raise your attack or defense, and some are even offensive items that you can use to attack surrounding enemies. A lot of people make the claim that this game is overly easy, but I personally got pretty close to dying sometimes and had to use items to restore some health. It may be a skill issue, but I don't want to think about that, so I'm just going to move on and say that the game is hard. After the first level, we get to Mount Lineland, which is a desert level, of course. Trek on through the mountain, and eventually we'll find a house with a Mario ripoff inside, but he randomly got stuck in the third dimension, so we decide to help him and get him back into the second dimension, and as a reward, he puts down the bridge so we can get into the town. That's another thing I really like about this game. Even though it's a 2D game, it's not entirely linear. There's buildings you can go in and characters you can talk to. It's pretty neat. Eventually, you'll find a secret room with a guy named Thuro inside, and he says that he's a pixel, which is the same creature that Tippy is, and, well, that all the rest of our partners will be. It's funny, I guess. It's a combination between Pixie and, well, Pixel. It's fun. Now with Thuro, we can leave the town, but not before meeting a Luigi ripoff. And with that, now we're in the next level, the Sands of Yold. In the level, we eventually get to a strange monument telling us to jump under the red-leaved palm tree 10 times. Once we do this, a secret door will open that lets us progress. This is another thing I really like about the game. In the level, there's a lot of these weird puzzles, to the point where they're barely even puzzles, and more so just finding out what you have to do and then doing it. It's fun because it's not overutilized, but it's used just enough to where it's still interesting. Now we fight Ochunks, who's a pretty cool boss. He'll jump around and even shoulder bash like Wario, and he even seems to be a pretty good sport when we beat him. And then he farts away. Yeah, this game's weird. At the end of the world, we meet Fractale, a robot dragon. He's getting ready to give us our pure heart when Dementio teleports in and makes him evil. We gotta go through a cool battle using the 2D and 3D modes, but when we eventually beat him, we finally meet one of the ancients, and she says she's been waiting for 1500 years to give us the pure heart. She tells us how when the Dark Prognosticus was created, her people decided to make a safeguard for it known as the Purity Heart, which they split into 8 pieces and split across the different dimensions. And then they wrote clues about it in the Light Prognosticus. After a funny gag in which she tries to tell us something about her past and we, fall asleep, she gives us our next pure heart, and the chapter is done. We get a cutscene with Ochunks begging for forgiveness about being bested, and Anastasia is getting ready to assimilate more of Bowser's minions. After this, we get a section where we play as Peach, and these 2 minions come to help us. And it's a cool thing seeing Bowser's minions teaming up with and defending Peach, and it's a really cool characterization of what are usually just enemies. Both of them are assimilated by Anastasia after sacrificing themselves to save Peach, and once it looks like Peach is done for, she's randomly teleported, and then we get another thing that's really important to this game, the post-chapter intermissions. They tell the story of a Romeo and Juliet-like romantic tragedy, and in this one, we see a human help a member of the Tribe of Darkness who doesn't seem too thankful at first. Now that we're back, we're informed that a girl has fallen out of the sky, and when we go to look, it's Peach, but she's knocked out cold. Kinda sounds like me after the Benadryl, you know what I'm saying, Luigi? So we make her some food, and then she wakes up and decides to join our party, of course. Peach is actually a fully playable character in this game, and it's pretty cool. She plays a little bit different from Mario, which is kind of the point. She uses her parasol to both protect herself from attacks and to float down slowly, kind of like in Mario 2. The thing I kind of don't like is that Mario is the only one that can go into 3D, which is kind of annoying at times. It makes sense since if everyone could go to 3D, then no one would play as Mario, but still, it's just a little bit tedious. Once we find the heart pillar, the next door is open, and now we need to find someone named Merly, who will give us the next pure heart. The first level is a kind of swamp, and we meet an escaped prisoner, and if you play as Peach, he says hot girl alert, which always made me really uncomfortable as a kid. He warns us not to go to Merly's mansion, and begs Peach to go out with him. Later in the level, we found another chest with another pixel, with this one being called Boomer. He's a bomb, if you couldn't tell. Boomer is a pretty good partner, as his skill of, blowing himself up is useful for puzzles and for attacking. After that, we're quickly finished with the level, and we finally get to Merly's mansion, and inside there's a bunch of these weird dogs that will take us out of the house, which is strange considering Merly was supposed to be meeting us. Once we get past them, we meet Merly's handmaid, Mimi, who looks a little bit familiar. She tells us that Merly is in the farthest room on the first floor, but it's locked, so we go through the other rooms looking for the key, and we end up running into traps. Again, it's kind of weird considering that she was supposed to be meeting with us. Seems like something a little bit fishy's going on. After nearly avoiding a spiky death, we get our key and free the giant dog, which chases after Mimi, and Tippy points out how weird that is. In the next level, we accidentally break this vase, and Mimi says how it was her most favorite vase, and that we're gonna have to pay her for the damages. But she doesn't want coins, no. She wants rubies, and 1,000,000 of them at that. So, we're basically enslaved to pay off our debt. And as you keep looking around this mansion, you'll eventually find Slim, who's another pixel, and he lets you, be slim. In this state, if you stand completely still, you won't take any damage at all. And eventually, we meet a guy who offers us the code to Mimi's Ruby Vault, but first, we gotta pay up. Once you get enough rubies to get the code, you use Slim to get to the vault, and once you unlock it, boom, the debt's repaid. Once we give the rubies to Mimi, she exclaims that now her curse is broken, and then she explodes. And now, we hit the goal, and we head on to the basement face-off. That doesn't bode well. Merly appears to us as a ghost and says how we have to find her. And when we do, she says that there's a small, teensy, teeny, beady fee of 10 million rubies, and asks us to sign a contract. We, of course, refuse this obvious trick, and then the true Merly appears to us and congratulates us on avoiding this imposter. That's when Mimi reveals herself and decides to go to her true form, which is this. What in the heck, Nintendo? I had to take up drinking as a child to try to forget this. Do you know where that left me? On my couch with a couple less Capri Suns in the fridge. As we work our way through the basement with Mimi chasing us, which, again, Nintendo, why? We eventually find Merly hiding in a toilet. Ew. Now, Mimi comes into the room and flashbangs us before turning into Merly again. And now, we have to play a quiz game show to find out who's the real one. We ask some questions, but none of them really matter because the real giveaway is the flies buzzing around the real Merly because, she was just in a toilet. Now we have to fight Mimi, and we use her own rubies and throw them back at her to damage her. As we fight, more of her spider legs fall off, which, again, is just kind of terrifying. After the fight, Merly finally gives us the pure heart and reveals that there are 4 heroes and that Mario and Peach are just the first 2. After we finally obtain our pure heart, we get another scene of everyone's favorite show, the Blecky Bunch. O-Chunks has been forced to write a 1,000-page essay on his inadequacy, and Bleck summons Dimentio to fight us for the next chapter. But it's what Bleck says at the end that's really interesting. It seems as though Bleck is doing this out of some sort of sadness or anger. After this, we get a section where we play as Luigi, and these horrible jerk Goombas manipulate the best character of all time for his help. They, of course, betray Luigi when they're all cornered, and Luigi is now assimilated into Bleck's group. We then get another intermission scene for our love story tragedy. We finally get the names of our 2 characters, Tympany and Blumiere, and it seems as though they have a bit of a forbidden romance, with their parents apparently not approving. Once we get back to Flipside, we're told by Merlin that one man has all the power over whether the light prognosticus or the dark prognosticus comes true. And he says that it's apparently a man in green, which sounds a little bit familiar. Once we put the heart into the heart pillar, we get to one of the best worlds in the game, the Bitlands. It's, an 8-bit world. And before Tippy can tell us how she feels the pure heart nearby, she's kidnapped by this absolute nerd emoji named Francis. After witnessing that horrible scene, we meet another pixel named Barry hiding in a bush. He gives us a couple clues on how to get to Fort Francis. Later on, we find a castle, and when we destroy it, Bowser falls out and makes a giant arena for us to fight. He jumps around and breathes fire, and for the most part, he's a pretty easy boss. Much like in every other Mario RPG ever, Bowser is the funniest character and has some of the best dialogue. Bowser talks like a big toddler, and Peach even calls him a big sweetie, which is really funny. After some convincing, he finally decides to join our party, and man, he's just a tank. He does double the damage of the other 2 characters, and his huge hitbox make it easier to jump on enemies, and not to mention his fire breath. The next level is a water level, but unlike most water levels, it's actually fun. It's in this level that we find Thudley, another pixel who gives us the power to ground pound, which we can use for puzzles or for attacking. Now we have to fight a giant blooper, and if you listened to Barry's instructions earlier, you would have known to attack the red tentacle. Now we're on to the next level, and it's a giant tree that we have to climb all the way up. No joke, this is probably the most annoying level in the game, since we have to climb up, and if we fall down, we have to climb up again. There's no shortcuts. It's kind of like that game Getting Over It. At the end of the level, we fight Dementio, and he transports us to a dimension that makes him 256 times more powerful. But little did he know, it also makes us 256 times more powerful, meaning that it evens out. With that done, we now ride the red wind that Barry told us about at the beginning, and it's his last hint that we have to follow. So now we can go back to regular gaming. And now we're finally at Fort Francis, and this place is just hilarious. The whole point is to make fun of nerds and weebs and everything of the sort. Francis has cat-made robots and even has some posters featuring different females from the series. Ew. We go through Fort Francis and we get keys and answer questions, and eventually we're able to open the door that lets us go to the room where Francis is keeping Tippy in. Now, just make sure you're playing as Peach, as only totally hot babes are allowed to enter. Man, this game really is weird. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, earlier in the level, there's a pixel named Carrie, and she's basically a scooter, and she's the best pixel in the game. Once we get into the room where Francis is, he thinks that Peach is trying to date him, and since he's never been in the presence of a woman before, he boots up a real-life dating sim. Man, Nintendo, you probably made a lot of people mad with this one. Now, Francis basically has control over, everything, and you only have a couple of dialogue options that you can choose as Peach. So, of course, you use Boomer and explode his graphics card. We try to take Tippy, but he hides her and even calls her Francine. This guy sucks. And now it's time for the boss battle. He turns invisible and even flashbangs you, and he uses these meow bombs, as he calls them, and you have to pick them up with Thorough and then throw them back at him. After a tough battle, we rescue Tippy, and she's so grateful that she creates the Pure Heart, which is kind of cool. The end of this chapter marks a change in Tippy, as now she's a little bit more upbeat and lively, and she begins to trust Mario and friends. Now we get another scene of Bleck's gang, where Bleck tells Anastasia to get someone only referred to as him on our heroes. She tells him that there's still time, that he doesn't have to destroy the entire universe, and he tells her that if she's not going to trust him, she can just leave. She of course refuses and even reveals that apparently he saved her. Now, we don't really know what this means. It could be in the literal sense, from death, or it could be in the sense that she's kind of been enlightened by him, this whole cult thing. Once everybody leaves, it's revealed that Dementio was listening in on the whole conversation and that he's working on projects of his own. We then get another intermission of our love story. And in this one, it seems that they're saying goodbye, and it's implied that Blumiere's father might have hurt Timpani in some way. Oh, and I forgot to mention, pretty much after every chapter, the looming void grows larger and larger, with this chapter, of course, not being an exception. We put the heart in the heart pillar, and now we're in the next world, except it's outer space, and we can't breathe. So, of course, we go back to Flipside, and we get this kid's goldfish, and we release it into the wild so that we can get the fishbowl to use as a space helmet. Wonderful. Reminds me of the time that I tried to use a straw as a snorkel as a child. Thanks for teaching me a bunch of BS, Mario. Now that we can breathe in space, we eventually find a little alien guy named Squirps, who says he's our captain. He tells us he knows where the Pure Heart is, and after a fun little shmup section, we're on to the next level. Now in this level, Squirps desperately needs to use the toilet, but the only porta potty in space is currently in use. And sadly, the person inside has no toilet paper, so they're not going to be finished anytime soon. Eventually, we find an old scroll, and after carefully reading it, we give it to someone so that they can wipe. Ew. Once the unfortunate soul, does their business, they finally come out and reveal themselves, and it turns out they're a pixel named Fleep. His ability is to make stuff, flip, and you can use it on these little dimensional rifts or whatever these are. Now that Squirps has relieved himself, we use Fleep's power to get to the key we needed. Now, in the next level, we use Squirps to open this gate, but it doesn't work the second time, and he exclaims that it must be because he's hungry. So, we find a grocery store and get him some chocolate. Once we get him the chocolate, he exclaims that it's so good, and then he duplicates himself, which causes the gate to open. Now it's time for the mysterious Mr. L fight, and I'm not going to make the joke about how he seems a little bit familiar. Yeah, it's Luigi. This is actually a really cool boss fight. Having to fight a brainwashed Luigi is just an awesome idea, especially because he's just a character that's been there since the beginning, not a new character. After the easy first phase, he has a second phase where he uses his Brobot against us in another shmup section. We defeat him, and it's revealed that Scorps is actually a prince, and the queen was his mother, and to protect the Pure Heart, she sealed Scorps away in a capsule for 1500 years so that he could guide the heroes to the Pure Heart. Now it's time for another scene with Bleck and the gang, and now everyone's introduced to Mr. L, and unlike real Luigi, he's very full of himself and egotistical. It's clear that he's supposed to be like a mirror of Luigi. After he leaves, Bleck quotes the Dark Prognosticus and says that though the man in red will be powerful, the green one will bring darkness to all. This further proves the fact that Luigi is the entire fate of all universes, which, can I just say, the way Luigi is written in this game is amazing. I mean, the fact that Luigi is now a bad guy and that he is the cornerstone of all universes combined is just insane. These writers went so insanely hard with this story to where it doesn't even seem like it should be in the same reality as something like the new Super Mario Bros. Games. Nastasia warns Bleck and even says how Bleck once cherished the universe and that it's strange that he wants to destroy it now. But what she says next is really sad. It seems that Bleck might be Bloomier from our story, but we still don't know who our Timpani is, and in Bleck's words, it sounds like she's dead. And now we're introduced to another aspect of our love story, and that's Nastasia's seeming love for Count Bleck, but how he doesn't really care for her as so much more than a minion. And now we get another scene of our love story, and instead of explaining it, I think I'll just let it play out. It's really sad knowing that this will end in tragedy and that these two innocent lovers won't be able to love. Once we get back to Flipside, Tippy is suddenly knocked unconscious, and it's revealed that Tippy wasn't always a pixel. Merlin found her in her true form, at her weakest, barely even alive, so he used his ancestors' magic to turn her soul into a pixel. After the reveal, we're told to find the next pillar, and as we explore Flipside some more and use the help of our pixels, we eventually find a strange room with stained glass pictures of the different ancients. After hitting all the blocks in order, the center mirror shatters, and once we go through by entering 3D, we're now in Flopside. Honestly, while at first Flipside seems to be a really small hub area, as you keep playing you realize it's huge. There's multiple levels, there's lots of areas that are hidden that you can only access after getting the correct powers, there's the outskirts, and now there's Flopside, which is a complete mirror of Flipside. Everything's dark and gloomy, characters have complete opposite personalities and even look different, and also there's a mirror Merlin here named Nolrem, which of course is just Merlin backwards. After speaking with him, he tells us where the heart pillar is, and once we put the heart in, Nolrem tells us to hurry back to Flipside because Tippy's been revived. Once we get back, Tippy explains how she's fine and that she just really wants to be near Mario for some reason. Now we're in the next world, which is the land of Kragnans. The Kragnans are these weird rock caveman guys who talk like that one surfer fish from SpongeBob.
Don't just stand there, dude! The tide's coming in! Oh! Dude?
We're told that the Kragnans are being kidnapped by plant people called Florosapiens, and that we have to stop them and help the Kragnans. To progress, we have to talk to this guy Jasperoid, and he makes us type out the word please a ton of times before he'll tell us a secret. And when he finally does tell us, it's this overly long and complicated code. And man, can I just say, this game is awesome. Skipping forward a bit, we meet O-Chunks, and before we can fight him, Dementio appears and aids O-Chunks with his magic. But of course, we still beat him. He says some funny things about how he regrets not confessing to some girl. After he and Dementio leave, we eventually get Cudge, the hammer pixel, who, lets us use a hammer. It's surprising that it took so long to get a hammer in a Paper Mario game. We use his power to break a box that was in our way, and now we're in a strange cave, and we meet Flint Cragley, who's a sort of TV personality, who's a bit full of himself. He tasks us with finding his lost camera crew, and once we do, he gives us the key that we need to move on. In the last level, we find another pixel named Dottie, who has the power to shrink us down, which we can use to go through these tiny little red doors. We find Ochunks and Dementio again, and now Dementio kind of brainwashes Ochunks so he has a different attack pattern. Once we beat him, the sprout falls off his head, and then we can use it as a disguise to access a room we couldn't earlier. And now we meet King Croatius, and he's the stereotypical evil, rich, royal guy. We ask him to just release the Kragnons, but he refuses because he needs them to mine more gems. Now he has this armor that makes him invincible, but if we attack at just the right moments using these weird little plant things, then we can hurt him. After we kill him, the Floro-Sapiens run in and tell us that we didn't get the whole story. Apparently, he was a great king, always putting his people first, and the only reason they kidnapped the Kragnons is because they were polluting the water that they needed to survive, and the dirtiness of the water changed the king. Kragley comes in and says to the camera that they were the problem, and after some reconciliation, we're given the Pure Heart, and now we get another scene of our bad guys. Mimi and Mr. L beg Nastasia to be able to fight, but she refuses, saying that they got specific orders from Blek to stand down. After she leaves, Dementio uses a little bit of reverse psychology and says that they would make Blek so happy if they destroyed the hero, so they both hop into action. And now it's time for another scene of our love story. It seems as though the two lovers are happy together, so what could go wrong? After this, Tippy acts a little bit strange, and when we go back to Merlin, he tells us to go back to Flopside because there's another heart pillar waiting for us there. Once we find it, Nolrem comes up to us and says that if we fail in the next world, we will not only lose our lives, but also the Pure Heart. Once we get to the next world, Tippy points out how much bigger the void is in this dimension, saying that they must be really close to destruction. It's a really cool setting though, with this ancient Japanese architecture, but with kind of an inverted color palette. After an easy battle, we're told by this guy, King Sammer, that to prove we're the hero, we must defeat all 100 of his vassals, which sounds a bit dumb, and it looks like the world is really close to ending. What's also dumb is that each room is so large, and the door is completely on the other side. This feels like it was made to waste as much time as possible. After the 20th battle, the void grows even larger, and Tippy exclaims how we must hurry, but then... The Sammer guys realize that there's no more time to waste, so they all stand down so we can rush through the next few rooms. Now we ask King Sammer to just give us the Pure Heart, and so he says it's on the 26th gate, but when we open the chest... Now we have to fight Mimi, but at least this time I didn't get scarred for life. Once we defeat her, we realize that she's just been wasting our time, so we rush ahead, and as we do, the whole world shakes. Until... We now have good reason to suspect that our timpani is indeed Tippy. Either way, we go back into the world and it's all gone. But Tippy says she feels the pure heart still. We walk through this barren white void and we can see elements of the old area still lying there. But for the most part, everything's just gone. It's a really long section to the point where it's kind of unnerving and uncomfortable. After a long walk, we see the pure heart, but it's covered in stone. Mr. L appears and takes the pure heart, and he spawns in his Brobot, and once we defeat him, we can notice something about Mr. L. He desperately asks why he can't win, and when Tippy tells him that he's weak, he gets very upset. Mr. L is the complete parallel of Luigi. He's insecure, but instead of trying to prove himself as a hero, he desperately tries to show off as a villain. Luigi, being a bit insecure and looking up to Mario, has been a part of his character for a very long time, but in this game, it's explored much further. In the beginning of the game, we can see Luigi being manipulated by the Goombas. He so desperately wants the term hero to be thrown at him that he'll undergo his main prerogatives. But now that he's a villain, he still desperately wants to prove himself, but rather than trying to be kind and try to gain the respect of others, he's being overly confident. He boasts about everything he does, and he's given himself his own nickname. And of course, he's using his strength to bully his way to the top. It's why the prognosticuses say that he's the one that will decide the fate of all worlds. After the cutscene, Dimentio comes in and straight up just kills him, which is kind of crazy. In our next cutscene with the gang of evildoers, we see Anastasia asking Bleck if something's wrong, and he disregards her question. He questions if the pixel could have been Timpani, but quickly swipes away the idea. This has basically confirmed the notion that Bleck is Blumiere and Tippy is Timpani. And now we get possibly the most important scene in our love story so far. I have to bring up again that this is in a Mario game. Blumiere's father killed Timpani, and this is why Bleck wants to destroy the entire universe. Once we get back to Merlin, he asks if we have the pure heart, and so we show him the stone-covered heart. But while we're all talking, we're suddenly invaded by Dimentio, who decides to, kill us. We then wake up as Mario in the underwear, and no, I'm not joking, that's what it's actually called. This guy talks to us and even says that this place is often called World -1, which is obviously a reference to the infamous glitch in the original Mario Bros. We're convinced that we're not dead, but he tells us to go ask Queen Jades and she'll let us know. In this section we have nothing. We can only play as Mario, and we have no pixels and no Tippy. In the next room, we see some girl singing how she wants to meet her prince, and when she sees us, she calls us an old, mustachioed fatty. This game's harsh. We trek on and we get to the River of Twigs, an obvious reference to Greek mythology's River of Styx. After paying the 4-coin fine, we finally meet Queen Jades. When she tries to weigh our sins, she notices a strange energy coming off of us, and we show her the pure heart covered in stone. Then she gets a call on her cell phone, which was really funny to me for some reason. She's informed that Lovebee, the girl that we met earlier, is missing, and tasks us with finding her while she holds on to the pure heart. She gives us a key and tells us to use it on a door at the bottom of the River of Twigs. Once we descend, we're immediately met with some creepy music that I'm pretty sure is used in every creepypasta game ever, and then these terrifying white hands that chase us. Once we go through the door, there's a simple puzzle, and then we meet Luigi finally. He's scared for obvious reasons, but he's super relieved when he sees us. He joins our party, and his special ability is the high jump. Hold down and then jump, and you're soaring into the sky, and it's actually pretty fun, and if you jump up into an enemy, you'll actually do some damage to it. We find Lovebee, and she subsequently makes fun of us some more, and when we return to Queen Jades, she gives us the revitalized pure heart, and now we return to Flipside. Merlin and Tippy are surprised to see us, and after we realize that Luigi is the fourth hero, we're on to find the next heart pillar. One quick trip to Flopside later, and now the door to the next world is open, only for it to be revealed to be the underwear again. Tippy asks us why the pure heart would lead us here before we start moving on, and once we get to Queen Jades again, she asks us to guide Lovebee back to the over there as a terrible monster is on the loose. Lovebee makes a comment about Mario and Luigi finding her cute, and Tippy says that they're not that superficial, before Lovebee teases Tippy, asking if she loves them. Once we move on to the next level, Lovebee teases Tippy some more, and we find a door that asks us some questions. I don't know why this is such a big part of the series, but there's always just these random quizzes, and I'm all here for it. We then find out that the beast everyone has been talking about is Bowser. He, of course, thinks that we're trying to keep him from Peach and immediately starts to attack. After a quick battle, we clear the misunderstanding and Bowser rejoins the party. His fire breath is even more useful here as there's these torches you can light so you don't have to climb in the darkness. After a really tough climb, we get a side quest in which we need to get a book back from a henchman in order to get the key. We find another door guy, and this time our test is to find some chain chomps, but instead of a regular boss battle, we're transported to a more traditional RPG battle. It's kinda goofy. Once we defeat it, the level is over, and now we're in the clouds leading up to the over there. After some climbing, we find Peach, but she's in a deep sleep. Lovebee informs us that since she ate the golden apple, she won't wake up for 100 years. But to speed things up, we can find a certain fruit that can wake anybody up. There's a lot of different colored fruits here, but the right one is a black apple. Once we get it and feed it to her, Peach rejoins our party, and now we're ready to finally get to the over there. Once we do get there, we find out it's under attack by creatures who want the pure heart. As we go through the level, we rescue more and more NIMBY, and eventually we get into a confrontation. Just as we think it's hopeless, all the NIMBYs start attacking the monsters as we move along. It's a pretty cool scene, seeing the NPCs fight for themselves. We trek on and find Gramby, who I failed to mention is Lovey's father, with Jades being her mother. He's injured while one of the monsters from the underwear is ready to finish him off. He reveals that the pure heart is Lovebee, as she was the perfect disguise to keep it away from evildoers like himself. He tells Lovebee that she's naive to think that her parents love her, and that they're only paying attention to her because she's the pure heart. Lovebee is genuinely distraught at this realization, and she can't even think of a witty remark, only conjuring the word okay. Now in battle, we have to use Bonechill's ice attacks against him, and once we finish him off, Lovebee returns with her parents, and we get this genuinely heart-wrenching scene. I don't know what to say. It's a genuinely sad scene, and so much happens in it all at once to the point where it just makes you want to cry. Now we get another scene with Bleck and the gang, and Dementio asks if Bleck knows the name Blumiere, saying that Tippy kept saying it over and over again. Nastasia points out to Bleck that the pixel must be Tympani, and that there's still time to stop the prophecy, but Bleck says that there isn't a way to stop it now, and he says Blumiere died a long time ago. Now we get the last scene of our love story. After all that, we finally get the last heart into the pillar, and then the final door opens at the top of Flopside. We're ready to do this, to save all worlds. We have all 4 heroes, and we have all of our pixels. There's nothing that can stop us now. As we climb through Castle Black, we solve puzzles, and at the end of this level, we find Ochunks. Bowser challenges him, but this time he's twice his normal size, and after a tough battle, Bowser tells Ochunks not to be ashamed of losing, and while they're talking, the ceiling caves in. But before it crushes us, Ochunks saves us since we beat him fair and square, and Bowser helps him, telling us to get out of there with the princess. As we leave, we hear a loud noise, and it seems as though the two have sacrificed themselves. In the next level, Mimi torments us throughout the entire stage, and at the end, Peach decides to teach this brat a lesson. After the fight, Peach tells Mimi to go find somewhere safe, but as they're talking, the ceiling caves in, and now they're holding on for dear life. Mimi asks why Peach would save her, and she tells her that's just the right thing to do, but before they can climb to safety, Peach loses her grip. They fall to their seeming doom, but we decide that we have to move on. In the next level, Dementio attacks us through these weird mirrors, and we eventually have to chase him through all the old worlds, with the black hole being incredibly huge at this point. Once we catch him, he asks us to help him destroy the Count, saying that he's been helping us all this time. This is, of course, a thinly veiled lie, so we refuse, and he says he'll destroy Luigi first, calling him a pushover. Luigi is outraged, and we see his insecurity showing once again. He tells Mario to run for it, saying that he can do it alone. Mario looks at his brother one last time, and now we're ready to fight. Dementio is constantly throwing projectiles and cloning himself, but after we defeat him, he cries for mercy, but we soon realize it was a trick, and now Dementio kills himself and Luigi at the same time. Mario says how they have to grieve later, and that they must move on. Now, with Mario as the only survivor, he has to go it alone. Now we're face to face with Count Bleck. Blumiere and Timpani finally see each other again with full knowledge of who they are, but sadly, he's too far gone. It seems our only choice is to defeat him. We keep on dodging his attacks, but we can't land a single hit because he's being protected by the power of the Chaos Heart. That is until Bowser, Peach, and Luigi show up. The Pure Hearts fly into the air and destroy Bleck's barrier, and Tippy quotes the Prognosticus, saying that when 4 heroes unite, their hope burns forth light to shatter the walls of light. We now effortlessly defeat him. But then... Now that the true threat has revealed itself, we find out that Luigi was the ideal host for the Chaos Heart, likely because of his massive insecurity. As we realize that we have no chance, we get another scene showing everyone we've met on our journey, and just as we're about to lose hope, now with the power of the Pure Hearts, we vanquish this awful abomination, but he reveals that he had one last trick up his sleeve. And now, the end of worlds is upon us. Blex says that there's only one way to save everyone and everything. He creates a door to the wedding altar that we saw at the beginning of the game, and now... If we stick around till the end of the credits, we see Bleck and Lumiere and Timpani standing together on a hill, and then we fade to black. This ending makes this one of the few games that has ever made me cry. And again, I just want to say how great of a story this is. I've got to give this game a 10 out of 10. Beautiful story, fun gameplay, amazing puzzles, and everything in this game, to me at least, is perfection. I know this video was a little bit less of a review and me kind of just summarizing the entire game, but I had a lot of fun with it, and I hope you did too. While everyone loves to glaze TTYD, maybe give this game a shot before putting it down. I really wanted to thank you guys for 3 years on this channel. I know I haven't been too consistent, but it's just fun to be able to make what I want to make, and if I have an audience, then that's even better. And with that, I've been Lopal Levi, you've been a great viewer, and I'm off. See ya.